Letters to Dead Authors, Charles Dickens, Part 2. Ah, sir, how could you, who knew so intimately, who remembered so strangely well the fancies, the dreams, the sufferings of childhood, how could you wallow naked in the pathetic and massacre holocaust of the innocents? To draw tears by gloating over a child's deathbed, was it worthy of you? Was it the kind of work over which our hearts should melt? I confess that little Nell might die a dozen times, and be welcomed by whole legions of angels, and I, like the bereaved fowl mentioned by Pet Marjorie, would remain unmoved. She was more than usual calm. She did not give a single damn, wrote the astonishing child who diverted the leisure of Scott. Over your little Nell and your little Dombey, I remain more than usual calm, and probably so do thousands of your most sincere admirers. But about matter of this kind and the unsealing of the fountains of tears, who can argue? Where is taste? Where is truth? What tears are manly, sir, manly, as Fred Bayman has it, and what lamentations ought we rather to be ashamed? Sunt lacrimae rerum, one has been moved in the cell where Socrates tasted the hemlock, or by the river banks where Syracusan arrows slew the parched Athenians among the mire and blood, or in fiction when Colonel Newcome and Adsum, or over the diary of Claire Doria Foray, or where Artemis laments with strange tears the death of Porthos, but over Dombey the son or little Nell one declines to snivel. When an author deliberately sits down and says, "Now let us have a good cry," he poisons the wells of sensibility and chokes, at least in many breasts, the fountain of tears. Out of Dombey and Son there is little we care to remember, except the deathless Mr. Toots, just as we forget the melodramatics of Martin Chuzzlewit. I have read in that book a score of times. I never see it, but I revel in Pecksniff and Mrs. Gamp and the Americans. But what the plot is all about, what Jonas did, what Montague Tigg had to make in the matter, what all the pictures with plenty of shading illustrate, I have never been able to comprehend. In the same way, one of your most thoroughgoing admirers has allowed, in the license of private conversation, that Ralph Nickleby and Monk are too steep, and probably a cultivated taste will always find them a little precipitous. Too steep, the slang expresses the defect of an ardent genius, carried above itself and out of the air we breathe, both in its grotesque and in its gloomy imaginations. To force the note, to press fantasy too hard, to deepen the gloom with black over the indigo, that was the failing which proved you mortal. To take an instance in little, when Pip went to Mr. Pumblechook's, the boy thought the seedsman's a very happy man to have so many little drawers in his shop. The reflection is thoroughly boyish, but then, you add, I wondered whether the flower seeds and bulbs ever wanted a fine day to break out of those jails and bloom. That is not boyish at all. That is the hard-driven, jaded literary fancy at work. So we arraign her, but she, the genius of Charles Dickens, how brilliant, how kindly, how beneficent she is, dwelling by a fountain of laughter imperishable, though there is something of an alien salt in the neighboring fountain of tears. How poor the world of fancy would be, how dispeopled of her dreams, if in some ruin of the social system the books of Dickens were lost, and if the Dodger and Charlie Bates and Mr. Crinkle and Miss Squeers and Sam Weller and Mrs. Gamp and Dick Swiveller were to perish or to vanish with Meander's men and women. We cannot think of our world without them, and children of dreams as they are, they seem more essential than great statesmen, artists, soldiers, who have actually worn flesh and blood, ribbons and orders, gowns and uniforms. May we not almost welcome free education? For every Englishman who can read, unless he be an ass, is a reader the more for you.